Okay, we are live for the first time in several months.
Hey, the first live stream in season during the 2023 season. How is everyone doing? We're coming off of the New York Giants 21-16 defeat at the hands of the Detroit Lions, and unfortunately, we'll get into some of the good things we saw, some of the bad things we saw from the broadcast. But this come from behind victory for the Lions was sparked, Chris, by a huge special team.
Okay. Hold on, folks. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but at least on my side of the stream, Nick has frozen. So, oh, you still there? You back?
I got you.
Okay. It's preseason for us too.
Did you hear my part about the special teams and how it's just been a disaster the last decade? And that is what really sparked the New York Giants' decline in this game.
Yeah, I think the special teams even took down the live stream, or at least attempted to do so.
Live
yeah,
streams, they are always funky.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was honestly really ironic. I replied this to your tweet, Z, whatever they're calling it now, that right after that special teams touchdown given up by the Giants, I was in the process of writing a point for my post game piece about how refreshingly boring the Giants special teams had been up to that point. They started off by forcing a couple kickoff returns by the Lions, and they stopped them. They didn't give up even the 25 yards the Lions would have had with a touchback. So, yeah, things were going well on special teams right up until that point, and then it was just all downhill from there. It was really a turning point. A couple missed tackles. I don't know, maybe Jamie Gillen outkicked his coverage, maybe didn't quite get the hang time he had been hoping for. Maybe some guys were out of position, but yeah, that really was kind of the turning point of this game.
It was. And I guess if we want to look at some of the positives, if we start in the beginning of the game, the defense dominated Nate Sudfeld and the Lions offense. And we saw some players that I believe we're going to be relying on. Now, Wink Martindale is going to entrust with a lot of responsibilities. Jason Pinnock is the one who is really coming to my mind right now, who made several huge plays. And Jason Pinnock, the interception, that was the least impressive of the three big plays that he made, because that was just a lollipop that was put up there. And it was a great play, more so by Tumon Fox, who used a double swipe move to shed the tackle's punch, one around the edge with speed, hit Sudfeld, ball just popped in the air. Jason Pinnock intercepts it. What an excellent way, though, Chris, for the New York Giants to start the season. And then he had the tackle for a loss a little bit after that. So you just started to see him everywhere. And then he had also a PBU or a forced incompletion on third down a little bit later against Sam Laporta. So Jason Pinnock, if there's one player to circle and be like, hey, the safety position next to Xavier McKinney is up in the air, who is going to seize that opportunity? Well, Jason Pinnock made a really good case for himself tonight.
Yeah, I think he's more or less, this is going to be painful, but I think he's intercepted that job the same way he intercepted that pass from Nate Sudfeld. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went there. It was painful. I apologize to everybody watching, but yeah. Honestly, the other play that Pinnock made that was really impressive to me was that run stuff behind the line of scrimmage that set up the turnover on downs, the play on Sam Laporta you were talking about just a couple seconds ago. Yeah, this really was the Jason Pinnock show, at least for the first quarter and a half, 2 quarters or so. But there were some other guys who played well in the first half that we should talk about. Trey Hawkins III. He was very impressive. He was all over the field. He had some really tight coverage. I think his play might have been bad news for Darnay Holmes and Cordell Flott. And I'll be honest, I thought Trey Hawkins was more impressive than Deonte Banks.
I think Deonte Banks played exceptionally well. He was beat, quote unquote, on the Jameson Williams play that was dropped, but he was in excellent coverage there. And sometimes you could be in excellent coverage and still be beat because the throw was elite. Jameson Williams just could not haul that pass in. But that's a very difficult cover. It was really impressive for Deonte Banks because that was coming across the field. He had to do that from off leverage against a speedy receiver like Jameson Williams. He stayed right in his hip pocket, and a good, more secure wide receiver would have hauled that in, but it didn't matter. Jameson Williams wouldn't have gotten in the end zone, and Deonte Banks was right in his hip pocket regardless. I was really impressed with Banks. And then I think it was the next play or maybe 2 plays later, he had the play along the sidelines, which looked to me to be OPI. It was certainly a push off by the Detroit Lions receiver. They ended up just picking the flag up and not penalizing the Lions. It was an incomplete pass anyways. But I thought Deonte Banks, Trey Hawkins, Cordell Flott, even before he ended up going down with an abdominal injury. Colin Johnson left the game as well. So the Giants have had a couple injuries. I think there was one more. I don't have it in my notes.
I believe Jamie Gillen might have had an ankle injury. So those are all 3 things to keep an eye on, because each of those guys, obviously Jamie Gillen, the Giants punter, is very important. Cordell Flott might have been in the running for that slot corner position, which who knows, that might be Adoree Jackson now if Trey Hawkins keeps playing like he has been. And then Colin Johnson, he's a guy we both really like. So hopefully whatever ailment he has isn't something long-term, because the Giants do need a presence on the outside, which is something else I do want to get to before we get out of here.
Yes, and we will, certainly. But I just want to state Hawkins, Banks, Pinnock, all these guys are under 25 years old. All young secondary pieces, all had really good games here. Flott, you can even argue, had a good game. Although I would say this, I know he had the PBU, and I think he left right after that, so maybe he aggravated something in his abdomen during that play in the red zone, in the end zone. But he was beat on that play too. Like a better throw by Nate Sudfeld would have. Yeah. And Nate Sudfeld, the 2 interceptions that he did throw were horrendous. He should have had a touchdown as well on that. The play to Jameson Williams was an absolute dime. He had a couple throws where I was like, that was really impressive by Nate Sudfeld. And then a second later, he would make some kind of just mistake or error and force the football into a place that was just an absolutely disastrous decision for the Lions.
Yeah. So one more defensive guy I want to talk about. You talked about Timon Fox early in the game. How about Jordan Riley? Manning the nose in the middle of the defense for pretty much the entire first half. I believe he was on the field into the second half. He was very impressive. And I think the thing that was most impressive about him to me was the quickness he played with, because I did not see that on tape from him in college. When we were talking about him right after the draft, he reminded me of a hydraulic press, just an irresistible force at the nose, but not really quick. In this game, he looked pretty darn quick, not only pushing into the backfield, but getting off of his rush and getting into pursuit. And to me, that was very impressive. And I think he helped himself tonight.
I absolutely think he helped himself. And who is he competing with? One could argue Ryder Anderson, even though they're different body types. Ryder Anderson is not there because of the tricep injury. DJ Davidson, he is still on the PUP. So there could be a roster spot, a back-end roster spot for someone like Jordan Riley. And going through his tape at Oregon, and even if you go back to some of his tape at Nebraska, and if you even go back to the community college that he played at, and like I think he played at 4 schools. And I watched a decent amount of his tape after the Giants drafted him. And he's not necessarily a pass rusher, but if you need that guy to occupy the gap, he can shed, and he is quick enough for a man of his massive size to shed and also close down gaps. So I thought he was impressive, and I also thought the UDFA out of Pitt, Haba Baldonado, had a really good game from a pass rushing standpoint. I want to watch some of the All-22 film to see how he did against the run. Just knowing his profile, he is a good run defender, very long, very strong. He had a bull rush rep where he got into the pocket and applied pressure. Probably would have been counted as a hurry, according to Pro Football Focus. And then he had the sack that was negated because he tickled the quarterback, or whatever the hell the NFL is flagging these days. So that was a really nice play where he just turned the inside quarter. He got his outside arm underneath the armpit of the tackle on the inside and just kind of pried him right open, and then just went right into the pocket, hit Adrian Martinez for the sack. Unfortunately, it was flagged. But I was impressed with Haba Baldonado and Timon Fox. And why is that so important? Because, Chris, we do not know who Edge 3 is as a pass rusher right now. We have Jihad Ward, who is, yeah, he can rush the passer a little bit, but not really. That's not his design. He is a run defender. He's going to play on early downs. You can kick him inside. He's kind of versatile in that manner. Doesn't offer much as a pass rusher. You need a pass rusher 3. Even if something doesn't happen to Azeez Ojulari or Kayvon Thibodeau, even if they are healthy, you still need a pass rusher 3. And I think that job is open right now. And it's between Oshane Ximines, who is meh. Oshane Ximines, he doesn't really do a great job rushing the passer. He's athletic, and you know how Wink drops those end man on the line of scrimmage off into coverage, into flat. He does that kind of well. But Haba Baldonado might be able to do that. Timon Fox might be able to do that. And I'm just impressed with what those 2 young UDFAs did today. And I'm glad that they're kind of making some headway towards maybe winning that edge 3 position.
Yeah, Deshaun Bowers even flashed a little bit over the course of the game.
Yes.
I think each of them did put some good things on tape to build off of as we go into week 2 and then week 3 against the Jets. But why don't we flip over to the offensive side of the ball? Because we did say the Giants do need that presence on the outside, because their depth at outside receiver is not particularly deep right now. It's basically Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton. Colin Johnson went down with an injury. We've mentioned that. They've got David Sills there, and the Giants rested a lot of their starters, but Isaiah Hodgins was still out there to start the game, and he had one catch that was pretty forgettable. I think maybe he was there for like the first series and then got out, which fine. But Jalen Hyatt, I was fully expecting to see the Giants try some play action shots to him downfield, and those plays really weren't there. They really mostly stuck with a lot of the same offense we saw from them last year. A lot of the quick rhythm plays, the bootleg rollouts, some screen plays, a lot of running plays, and I was expecting to see the speed they had acquired showcased more, and it really wasn't.
No, it wasn't. They did the one rollout play with Tyrod Taylor, who just dumped it off to Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley got absolutely annihilated by Brian Branch. But I will say this, Cole Beasley and Jamison Crowder seem to be the most competent receivers operating within the hatches, which to whose surprise is that? These are 2 veteran wide receivers. I still think they are fighting for possibly a roster spot. Sterling Shepard is another guy who can play outside as well, though. That's another player that we can kind of maybe group in with Hodgins. I know he's more of a slot guy. Paris Campbell as well. I think the Giants are going to have to get creative with that, because if Colin Johnson is injured for a long time, I don't see, I mean, it's hard to say this now. It's a little premature, but Bryce Ford Wheaton did not have a great game. And one of my biggest issues, when you are that big and that fast and you blow up the combine in that type of manner, there's a reason why you're undrafted. No one took a risk on day 3 for you. And one of the reasons why, if you go through his 2022 film, is he bobbles the football and he has these huge concentration errors. He had that on that 3rd down play where the ball, Tommy DeVito, who slung it, by the way, I felt like Tommy DeVito was pretty solid in this game, showing that toughness, showing that Jersey grit, which, you got to respect.
He was fun.
He was fun. Yeah, he's a fun preseason type of guy. And I felt like the ball to Tommy Sweeney was really impressive on the double Y seams. I like that play to the boundary, just run the outside Y up, and then the other one up the seam like that. It's Tommy Sweeney. That was a beautiful ball, shower narrative, because they both went to Don Bosco together. But Bryce Ford Wheaton had the ball right in his chest for a first down, popped it up in the air. It was almost intercepted. That's something we saw a lot throughout his tape, was it not?
Yes, it was. And that's something we saw a lot throughout the off-season program, mini camp, through training camp. He's got all the tools right up to about here. He needs to work on these.
Right to about that.
That was kind of the wrap on him coming out of school. He's big, he's athletic. Dude can block. That was one of the things that jumped out to me about his tape. For a wide receiver, he was a hell of a blocker. But his first job is catching the damn ball, and that's something he's got to do if he wants to make an NFL roster. Right now, I'm looking at him as kind of a practice squad guy, unless he really impresses. And right now, I don't think too many teams are taking note of him. I sent a message to you before we hopped on live stream that if Chase Cota doesn't make the Lions squad, I absolutely think Joe Shane is going to put in a waiver claim on him, because he was impressive.
You know the Giants front office, their pro football department, Chris Ursetti, all of them, they're going to
Yes.
be scouring the free agent market once cuts roll around, and the Giants are going to look a little bit different. So Bryce Ford Wheaton needs to seize these opportunities, especially if Colin Johnson is out for an extended period of time. Then his path to the roster is much clearer, but he did not do himself any favors today. Another thing that was a little worrisome was the offensive line, I think, right? Like, obviously, you didn't see the
I
top
was
guys.
just going to bring that up. Yeah.
I'll tell you this, though. John Michael Schmitz looked fine to me. I didn't see anything
Yes.
wrong with John Michael Schmitz just from the broadcast. But everybody else, I saw some bad plays from Azudu, some bad plays from Ben Bredesen, Corey Cunningham. Woof. It was not great from Mr. Corey Cunningham.
No.
I don't know, Chris.
It's not great from Matt Peart either.
No, it wasn't great for Matt
I will
Peart.
say,
So
if we're gonna pick nits, I would like to see John Michael Schmitz play with more consistent leverage. There were instances, especially against like Isaiah Buggs and the Lions number twos, because they didn't have really many starters out there to begin with either, where Schmitz did wind up lunging at guys. And it wasn't super obvious at game speed, but when you saw it on the replay, when the few times they did have replays, he did get out over his skis. And that's something I want to see him work on. Now, he is a rookie. It's his first NFL action, and leverage was one of the things he did best in college. So I am not terribly worried about that long term. But it's something I would like to see him work on. Just keep his feet underneath him more consistently. Now, what you talked about with Zudu and Bredesen, that is a bit concerning for me because I think the Giants want those two guys to be their starting guards. You know, Mike Lewinsky might have the inside track to the right guard position, but man, the Giants have to want Andrew Thomas, Josh Azudu, John Michael Schmitz, Ben Bredesen, and Evan Neal to be their starting offensive line because you can keep that offensive line together for a decade. And we have seen what happens when you keep guys together for that long. They get good together. But the guards got to step it up.
Guards got to step it up. And damn, the Lions Okora brothers, man, they must be having a party tonight. At the end of the game, and even throughout the game, they were just dominating the Giants. And some of those guys were really highly regarded. I mean, Julian Okwara coming out of Notre Dame was what, a second-round pick. He's going up against like Corey Cunningham, and he's just absolutely dominating that matchup. It was a mismatch for Big Blue, unfortunately. Chris, anything else we want to touch on before we get out of here? One thing I want to say, we know Brian Daboll was on the sideline just heated at Thomas McGahee after the punt return touchdown, which he should be. He was also heated because the Giants should have won this football game from the onset. Two huge Lions mistakes. Giants defense stepped up with the Tamon Fox, Jason Pinnock interception, and then I believe it was a turnover on downs. Giants started with the football twice in Lions territory, came away with 6 points. That's a losing recipe right there. That allows teams to climb and claw and scratch their way back into a victorious stance. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, for this game, the Giants were on the opposite side of the formula they used to win games the previous year. Yeah, they didn't have turnovers, but they let the other team hang around, which is what other teams did to the Giants last year. They let them hang around, and they came from behind and clawed and scratched their way to the win. And the Giants, they just failed to capitalize on the opportunities. Like they stole a possession to start the game, then they forced a turnover on downs to follow that up immediately. Then they got the ball to start the second half. Like if you get basically 3 chances to put points on the board like that without the other team being able to answer, you should win that game. Like it comes down to little bits like that. But this is also preseason. You know, a lot of the starters weren't playing. A lot of the Lions starters weren't playing either. But it just gives them coaching points, things to work on, things to improve next week and then the week after.
Anything else, buddy?
No, I think that's about it. I suppose we probably could wax a little bit poetic on Dan Campbell and Brian Daboll. I kind of got flashbacks to way back when I used to watch pro wrestling, maybe like, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mankind Mick Foley. But I'll leave it up to our viewers to decide who was which. But
Yes, use your
you know,
imagination, viewers.
I think that's about enough for a Friday night. Maybe other
And I'll
people can
say
go,
one
relax.
Tommy DeVito got his reps in, and although the Giants lost, he still deserves that extra arancini tonight. So enjoy yourself, Tommy DeVito. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Chris and Nick Show here on Big Blue View Radio. Please, if you have not done so already, like, subscribe, comment on the podcast, and also head on over to bigblueview.com. We will be extensively covering this game and the Giants moving forward. Thanks, and have a lovely one.